only by the solidity of the land beneath their feet. 2 more long leaps, and he looked back. The dog had faltered, a whine of confusion as his paws hit the moist ground. He retreated, turned an unsure circle. A vexed shout met its hesitation, commanding it on. It was trained to obey, and so it jumped, a huge leap, covering most of the distance the brothers' erratic progress had put between them. "Grigore!" Pavel screamed as the dog lunged. The Rottweiler landed just short of him, front paws hitting the ground with all its weight, preparing to spring again. Pavel froze, Grigore awash with terror. Then, that sound. The squelch of wet land. The dog clearly puzzled as its legs started to sink. Panic set in, the Rottweiler beginning to thrash around, doing exactly what it shouldn't, as the mire began to claim it. The men behind were gaining, still yelling at the dog, ordering it to attack, oblivious to what was happening. They were close enough that Grigore could make out the glint of guns in their hands. "Hurry!" he shouted, urging Pavel after him as he resumed his negotiation of the treacherous land. It might have stopped the dog, but it wouldn't stop the bullets the men would soon be firing. And if they made it to the other side, what then for the brothers? In his weakened state, Pavel wouldn't be able to run for much longer. Curses now, carrying over the darkening landscape. The men had reached the edge of the bog, had realized the double impediments to their pursuit, their first means of attack, yelping in pain. In normal circumstances, Grigore would have turned back to help, never one to ignore animals in distress. But these weren't normal circumstances. A loud splash. More curses, the men trying to reach the distraught Rottweiler. Grigore kept striding, his brother's shadow in his peripheral vision, until his feet hit solid ground, or what passed for solid ground in this sodden wilderness. Only then did he turn, helping Pavel to his side and staring back across the morass. The men had managed to reach the Rottweiler and were hauling it to safety. It wouldn't be long before they circumvented this obstacle and were back on the hunt again. The ragged breaths from his brother told Grigore all he needed to know. Running was out of the question. They needed to find somewhere to hide, and quickly. He scanned the hills encircling them on 3 sides. He was well acquainted with this terrain, even though he'd never been here before. The crag-topped fells, the spectacular limestone pavement. He'd been born in mountains such as these and knew the wealth of opportunities to hide up there. A cave, perhaps, some hollow in the limestone that could offer them sanctuary until the hunters gave up. A harsh cough from Pavel, who was leaning against his brother, one hand clasped to his side. Broken ribs, Grigore suspected. The man was in no shape to make it up the steep slopes. And besides, the dog would track them easily up there. "What now?" Pavel asked wearily. What indeed? In an ideal world, treatment, food, and warmth, and a guardian angel to keep them safe. Even as he thought it, Grigore felt the wind change, as though he'd conjured up a divine messenger which was now whispering to him from behind. He turned, feeling the breeze on his cheek, seeing the hunters across the bog. Hunters who were no longer able to rely on scenting their prey, no longer able to rely on the light either. "This way," said Grigore, pointing away from the safety of the hills to where the valley narrowed into a bottleneck. Trying to look more confident than he felt, he led his brother into the dark. Chapter 1. Barbara Hargreaves wasn't one for losing her temper. A working life lived serving the good folk of Bruncliffe their weekly rations of meat across the counter of her husband's shop had smoothed away any of the irascible edges she'd once had. But if there was one thing that was likely to rise her ire in these, her middle ages, it was having her time wasted. And so, as she sat in the office of the Dales Detective Agency on that Monday morning, late spring sunshine shining down on the narrow street outside, she was doing her best to bite her tongue. Because her time was most certainly being wasted. She didn't in any way suspect it was personal or malicious. It was just that the place was in meltdown. The desk before her was littered with paperwork, pages spilling out of folders, post-it notes stuck.